combining geometry nodes with some rigid body simulation to create this awesome effect in Blender. And this was inspired by Jonathan. He created this awesome effect in Houdini, but I'm gonna try it in Blender. This is a tutorial that you can actually follow along from start to finish. I explained pretty much everything, so let's get started. So what I have in my scene is a 3D model that pretty much everyone can make. I'm sure you'll be able to model this very quickly from some cubes and stuff like that, but we're not going to cover the boring part here. So first what we want to do is we want to create the rigid body simulation of the little chunks of the ice cream popping out just like that. Let's parent this stick to the ice cream right there. So I'm going to hit Ctrl P and keep transform. If I rotate that, both of them are going to be rotated that way. So that's good. First I'm going to hit Alt R on this so that everything is aligned perfectly for us. Bring it up just like that. So that's what we got. Now I'm going to slice it up a little bit right there, just like that, and then we're going to separate that part and use it for the slices. I'm going to get a plane. Just hit tab on this. I'm gonna GY, create some loop cuts, subdivide that. Now let's move it right here so that we can cut this part with the Boolean modifier. But before we do that, let's just give it a displacement modifier, create new texture, then click on this button, make it clouds. I'm sure you know this workflow. Let's bring the depth to 0, bring up the scale for it a little bit. Hit Ctrl 1 on this to give it some subdivision. Bring it up maybe. Bring down the scale of this thing. Now you can go to the edit mode and edit the shape as you like. I'm gonna apply these two modifiers. Let's get this one. I'm gonna duplicate it first, and then I'm gonna add in a Boolean modifier. Select this with the Boolean, and now we have that. I'm gonna right click, shade auto smooth. So before we Boolean that, I'm just gonna apply a subdivision surface to make it smoother, and apply that. Turn on the Boolean now. Now we want the second one as well, so let's just duplicate that mesh again. I want you to make it fast from exact. So now we got the opposite mesh of that one. Just apply both of those modifiers on this. So we got this mesh and we got this mesh. And the first one is also important, which is the full origin of the whole thing. Now keep in mind, for the rigid body simulation to work perfectly fine, I want you to check the scale of your object. Make it something like 8 meters, because the rigid body works very well with the objects with bigger scale. This is going to be the main part of this. I'm going to name it to main, and this one is the small cuts. Just move that to a new collection and make it cells. So these are going to be our cells, and the plane right there, let's just delete this Boolean plane. Now we have this mesh and this main mesh right there. For my animation, I want the rigid body simulation to start after frame 30. So on the frame 30, I'm going to go to the object properties for my main mesh. Then I'm going to go to the visibility, insert both of these keyframes, then go to 31 and hide both of them and insert it again. And after 31, we want to show this one. I'm going to name it to big cut. On the 31, I'm going to insert the keyframes, go back to frame 30, and then hide both of those and insert it again. So when we play this now, we have our main object. It's visible in the viewport and renders. Then we move it to 31, and after that, this mesh will be switched right there. Now we want to make the cells from this mesh. So if I select that, now you have to go to the edit preferences, go to add-ons, search for cell fracture and turn that on and save your preferences. Select that. I'm gonna hit F3, search for cell fracture. Right there we have cell fracture. Now in the source limit, I'm gonna make it 55. In the noise, I'm gonna bring it up a little bit. Now let's hit OK on this. They worked, but I think it's very big. Then I'm gonna hit F3 again, cell fracture, and the source limit, let's make it 77 and hit OK. Now they're smaller, it looks pretty good. I'm gonna hit M and move it to the cells collection so we don't have a mess in our viewport. And the origins are already in the center, we don't have to change that. Then I'm gonna go to my small cut mesh right there, and we don't need it, so let's just delete it. Right click on our collection, I'm gonna click on select objects, so it will select all the objects in my collection. Right click and shade auto smooth, so there's no shading issue going on there. So we want the simulation to start from frame 30 So I'm gonna go right here to the scene properties, and in the rigid body world, we're gonna make the start frame in the cache to 30, and the end frame I'm gonna make it 120 because we don't need that much right now. Let's go to the physics properties, and you see I have highlighted one mesh in here, and then I'm gonna go to rigid body, click on it, and active is good. I'm gonna make the mask to something like 0.6, and it's good as convex hull. And then we have the surface response. So I'm gonna make the friction to 1. Then I'm gonna go to the dynamics, and in the rotation, let's make it 0.8. I'm gonna turn on the deactivation. I don't know what that does, but I just turned it on. Go to the object, rigid body, and copy from active. So all the other objects are gonna have the settings of this one. So I'm gonna save my file now. Now if you go to frame 1 and you just play the animation, it's like that. It's just going down. So we don't want that. We want some action in there. So go to the scene properties, and in here go to the field weights, gravity, and make the gravity to something like 0.1 or 0.13. That's good. The substeps per frame, gonna make it 30. Shift S cursor to select it, hide this one, and we're gonna get a force field force. Let's make the force to something like 280 or 300. Randomize these values a little bit, so bring that up a little bit. Noise amount, give it some seed, and we're gonna bring up the wind factor a little bit. The power, I'm gonna make it 1. I'm gonna select this mesh right there, go to rigid body, make it a passive object, and make it a mesh. So if I go back and play this now, yeah, it's working now. So you may want to have to experiment with this one if you want it to look in a certain way. That's the rigid body part of this. Select the cells collection and click on instance to scenes. Now we just have an instance of that collection. I'm gonna get my force out of this collection to the ice cream collection, and in the cells turn this one off, and you see right here I'm just gonna hit Alt G on this, so it's in its place now. We can hide or unhide this collection, so that's the benefit of making it a scene collection right there. In the object properties on frame 30, we need it to be invisible, so just turn both of these off and keyframe it. On 31, I'm gonna turn these on and keyframe it again. This is how the animation looks like. That's neat. This is my collider with the rigid body objects right there. Duplicate it, hit M, and create a new collection that is trash, so we just keep our trash objects or simulation objects in there. Hit OK and turn it off forever. So now we have this object that we can change. You have to remove the rigid body from this one now, because we have already a trash object that is doing our work for us. I'm gonna hit tab on this. We want a little bit of a border in here. So I'm gonna hit 2 and go to select sharp edges. Hit Shift D on this. Then I'm gonna hit P and selection. So we have this edge here. Then I'm gonna hit tab, select everything. M to merge it by distance because we don't want this mess. We're gonna join it with our original mesh. I'm gonna apply the subdivision on this, and I'm gonna go to my scene properties. Let's just turn off the rigid body world and hide the cells collection. We don't want Blender to crash while doing the geometry node stuff right here. So after this frame, I'm going to hit tab on this. I need a mesh from here, so let's select this edge loop and Shift D, P to separate by selection. I'm gonna select this edge loop now, 1, and just grab it inside this a little bit to the middle. I'm gonna scale it down, scale x-axis, and that's it. So I'm gonna hit F2 on this object, chocolate effect object. I'm gonna move that to a new collection, make it effect. Now let's create a new geometry new system on this. We want some curves like this first to use in our geometry nodes. So let's just create those curves. I'm gonna use my old ones because I don't want to create them again. So I'll show you how to do it anyway. Let's create a path curve and RZ90, grab Z axis, scale everything up, hit tab, just grab these just like that and make this shape. And now you just have to select them and duplicate them around, scale them up, and keep in mind you have to do all of this in one curve object. So I'm just going to use my old objects. Alright, paste the object that I made before. Alt G, grab Z axis. Now let's select our node system object, effect object, which was this one. I'm going to move my path to the effect collection. And make it a relative. We're gonna get this geometry and set the position of it to make these curves a little bit randomized. Set position. Let's preview that directly. In the offset right here, let's get a vector math node. Make it scale. Let's get a random value in here. Now I'm gonna make all of these 0 so I can see what I'm changing here. I'm gonna hide my original curve so that we don't get confused with that. And I don't want the initial points to move with the random value, so let's get a endpoint selection node and make it not connected to selection. And the start size is going to be 0 and the end is gonna be 1. So the start points are not moving at all now. But generally, you can make the curves as interesting as you want and make them go this way and twist wherever you want. These curves, we're gonna trim them and convert them to a mesh. Let's just trim curve, and this is gonna use a value node. So let's get a value. We want a set curve radius node. This is gonna be helpful with making the radius of these curves a little bit interesting. So let's make a set curve radius. Put that in here, and I'm gonna get a curve to mesh node. If you type C here, it will give you a curved circle. Connect that right here, make the resolution to 8, and in the set curve radius we want a spline parameter. Get the factor, run it through a float curve, connect that to the radius, and we're gonna get a math node. Let's bring this down right here. I'm gonna bring this one up a little bit that way. Get a new marker in here and get one right here as well. I'm gonna bring that down a little bit. You can play with these values and make it how you want. And now we're gonna just bring down the radius overall in here. And now if you just play with the trim curve value, this is what you get. So you can randomize the trimming as well, but I'm not gonna do that. No point of doing that right now. These don't look as smooth and juicy as you saw in my renders, but I'm gonna show you how to do that too. But before we do that, we want an initial chocolate border right here too. For that, we're gonna get our original mesh, which is this one, and convert it to a curve. So let's get the group input, mesh to curve, curve to mesh again. Then set curve radius. Then in the curve to mesh object, let's just get our original circle and connect that, and then just gonna join these two together with a join geometry node. And now for the radius, what I'm gonna do is get this value node. So when it's right here, I want the border right here to scale up. Run it through a color ramp. Then I'm gonna flip the color ramp because the values are negative in here, I think. So let's get the color and add a math node, multiply it with this color and make it something like 40. Connect that to the radius. Oh, and you're gonna have to clamp it. I think it's still very big. You can get your own circle right here and connect that to the profile, then bring this down a little bit. So I think this will work fine. That's it. Now if you bring up the value right here, you can see it's scaling up and then it stops right there, which is pretty interesting. You can also get a smooth minimum node. Turn off clamp, make it smooth minimum. The value is going to be 1 and 0.8. And now it will play smoothly. Now you have to select this object. We have a visibility going on this one. So we're gonna remove the visibility keyframes from here. So right click, clear keyframes again. So now we don't have this issue anymore. When the pieces are blown up, I want them to start at the same time. I'm gonna turn on my rigid body world so that you can see this simulation right here. So in here, if I go back a few frames, we're gonna start from there. So we're essentially starting from value of 1 on the frame 30, I think. I'm gonna hit I to insert a keyframe, then go to frame 120 or something, or 118, bring down the value to 0, and insert the keyframe with I again. You can see at the start it's a little bit slow, so you just have to select the keyframe and bring it back until it looks normal. And I think this looks good. So if I play this now and turn off the overlays for a bit, this is how it looks like. Now of course it's starting a little bit faster than this, so you can just bring that keyframe back a little bit and it will be fixed. Now it's all a matter of timing now. So the simulation and effect part of this is done, and now we have to smoothen this mesh a little bit. Let's just get a remesh modifier and make it 0.04. Turn on the smooth shading. Then we're gonna get a smooth modifier and make the repeat to something like 70. This is a lot. Let's make it 50. Now let's go back to our geometry nodes. We need a little bit of more radius, obviously. Let's just bring up radiuses for both of these circles. So bring this one up. I think now let's tweak this one right here. I'm gonna bring this up as well. I'm gonna apply the scale on it. Then you can bring up the radius just like this. Yeah, it's starting to look good. Next thing, and then bring up this radius as well. This is it. You can set the position of it. So let's get a geometry nodes again. In this part I want it a little bit displaced, so let's get a new geometry node system on that. Get a set position node, get a vector math with V and M. Vector math, make it a scale, and this is going to be the normals. We're gonna duplicate the same object, Shift D, leave it at its place. Then I'm gonna remove all of the modifiers from it because we need it up there. And now this is the proximity object, so I'm gonna name it to prox. Select the effect again and get the prox object in here. Hit F to fill it so you just have a good mesh. Now I'm gonna select this mesh again. Set the scale to something like 0.1, it is too crazy right now. Make the prox objects relative. Get a proximity node, and I'm gonna give it a math node. Control Shift click on this one to get a Weaver node, and on this one too. So now let's play with the math node to make it work. Here I'm gonna get a map range as well to make them smoother. Make a smoother step. Bring this to max value up, just like that. I'm gonna make it from minimum 1 to maximum 0. I'm gonna connect that to my scale right here and turn this off. We're gonna fix that in a minute. Let's get a math node again and multiply it. Bring that down just like this. So I made it 0.1, and right here you can also use a noise texture. That's a good idea to make it look random. I'm also gonna go to my first geometry node setup again and just bring down the radius a little bit for it. So this is 0.275, so let's make it 0.26 right there. And this one is 1.17, so let's make it 1. Now this depends on what you want, so I'm gonna go to my last geometry node system right there, and let's get another scale node again. Shift D to duplicate that, and I'm gonna make this to 0.6. I'm gonna select the object. Let's get a set material node. Set material. Create a new material for the chocolate. Select the choco material in here. Go to the shading tab. We want subsurface to be 0.33, something like that. And then we're gonna get an RGB node. I'm gonna choose this color, make it very. Shift add in an area light. Gonna scale it up a little bit more. In the power, let's make it 20,000. It's a lot, but yeah, it works fine for me. Make it cycles, GPU compute, 300 render samples for now. Let's make it medium high contrast. I'm gonna use motion blur as well, but right now it's fine. Let's go to the rendered view. These both are turned off. So this is starting to look very interesting. The subsurface and the light, they look very awesome together. You can see the highlights on the ice cream right there. And I'm gonna duplicate this light. Let's just duplicate it, rotate it again. Grab it, scale it down, grab it. It's too much for this one, so let's make it 5,000. Gonna grab it right here, rotate it. So this is what my lighting setup looked like. Let's do this object now. I'm gonna hide my cells, turn off the rigid body world, select this object. Let's give it some displacement first. So for the displacement, let's go to add a geometry nodes modifier on this. It's gonna be very simple. And go to geometry nodes, create a new one, make it set position. Let's get a vector math again, make it scale, normal. Gonna get a Verona of texture. Let's get a color ramp and play with these values to make it look like what you want it to be. Let's get another scale node, bring this down, bring up the scale a little bit. But that's how I did that effect in it, and it looks pretty good. We're also gonna store this attribute in case we need it in our shader. So let's get a store named attribute, connect that to the value, make it the Verona, VOR, save that file, of course. And I'm gonna go to my shader editor and select that, create a new material. This is gonna be my chocolate coating. Let's go to the rendered view and see how it looks like. First, I'm gonna make the color to a dark chocolate color. Oh, this looks awesome. Let's give it a little bit of subsurface. Now let's get an attribute, which is our attribute for these things. Make it the VOR. Get a color ramp. You can see this is how it looks like. We are gonna make the black value to this color, so let's paste that in here. Make the white one to this one, but make it bright and low saturated so it looks like peanuts. I'm gonna bring that back a little bit. Let's go to geometry node, make this a little bit bigger, so let's make it 3. Oh, 5 I think. Then I'm gonna bring down the scale to 1.5. So let's bring down the randomness a little bit. Now let's go to the shading tab again. Let's connect that color to the subsurface color as well. Now it looks... Let's just get a hue saturation node so that we can control the saturation. I'm bringing it down a little bit. Now it looks pretty good to me. We just missed one big thing here, which is the roughness. If I bring down the roughness for this object, it looks pretty good, really nice. Now let's just select the lighting. I'm gonna bring it back a little bit. Now you can change the color of things, make them brighter. I'm gonna bring up the subsurface a little bit for this one, and this is done. It's all working perfect. It's looking awesome. And what else do we need? So if I play this in my report, let's turn on the cells and the rigid body world as well. So let's go to the rendered view and see how this looks. Oh right, we just forgot to add this material and this geometry node system on this object as well. So let's go to add modifier geometry nodes, make it the geometry nodes.001, and then I'm gonna go to the material and make it the choco coating material. That's the coating that we add here. Now if you play this, it's breaking just like that. And one more thing which is missing, we didn't give a material to our pieces, which is very important because yeah, they are the same object. So I'm gonna hide my cells, turn on these cells right here. I'm gonna right click, select objects, make one activated in here, go to materials, select the chocolate coating material, then I'm gonna hit Ctrl L and link materials. So all of them have that material now. I'm gonna hide this collection now, and if I go back and simulate that again, turn this on. All right, that is looking nice. Even in the Eevee, it looks awesome. Alright, and I think that in the first geometry node system and in the second one, in both of them you have to get a set material node and select the choco material in here. You can just get a camera right here, Control Alt and 0 to place it right here. Like this, I'm gonna make it 1080 by 1080, and hit N, go to view, camera to view. That's it. Hit N again, turn that off, go to rendered view. That's how your render looks like. And I'm so excited to see your renders. You can tag me on Instagram or Twitter, wherever you post stuff, and I'll be so happy to see that. If you like this video and if you want to support this channel, which you can join my Patreon, which is the best place to support me. You'll find every project file there, and I may start doing tutorials that are only for Patreon members. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in my next tutorial.